In other news, has seen massive shifts in hiring patterns over the last year. A study by RazorpayX Payroll, the business banking platform of Razorpay, has found, and this is based on payroll data of 25,000 plus employees across 1,000 or more startups. Now, this study finds that hiring of new permanent employees dropped by 61% over the last year, with CXO hiring seeing a massive 93% drop. Gig workers seem to be the preferred way to go for startups, where payments to gig workers have also seen a growth of 153% since October last year, and the number of enterprises that have shifted to a semi-gig workforce model that has also increased by 15%. Joining me now to discuss this report and its findings is Shashank Kumar, the MD and co-founder of Razorpay. Shashank, welcome on the show and thank you for your time. If I could start by asking you the broad takeaways in just a few lines, if you could summarize for us of the study that you've done.
Hey, Ray, hi, thanks for welcoming me on the show. I think the study that we have done around payroll data for last 1 year is really, really interesting and talks about, the health of the startup ecosystem and how a post-COVID environment and the funding winter is impacting, startups in all the different sectors, right? So first of all, I think we have seen 61% decrease in new employee hiring, right? Which talks about how companies are holding back in giving out new offers, but at the same time, a lot of companies had built out their workforce on the back of the COVID growth and tackling that growth. And that as that growth has gotten normalized, now we are seeing that, while the salary payouts has still increased year on year, but it's not at the same proportion as what it used to be. Secondly, I think secondly, I would talk about how a lot of more companies are preferring, gig workers and contract workers, because that is being seen as a cheaper form of, hiring, and also for a lot of low-skill jobs, I think that's becoming a more preferred choice for a variety of startups, in the sector.
But Shashank, is there light at the end of the tunnel? You're talking about this great normalization in hiring, a blip because of the current funding winter that we're seeing and the mass layoff news that we've of course been seeing across companies.
I actually think that, after 3 to 6 months, we'll see some of these trends picking up back again as companies adjust to, funding not being available on tap and living with the reality of, building out more sustainable businesses, at least in the short term, right? Rather than just relying on, funding coming through. So I think it's overall okay for the startup ecosystem. You go through these ups and downs, and the startups which will do well are the ones which can adapt to these dynamic environment and still come out on the other side in a really strong way.
Shashank, I thought it was quite interesting that you said almost 15% of the organization said that they're moving towards a semi-gig workforce hiring trend. But the pay for them, while your report says it's increased by about 153%, we still hear about, the unfair contracts handed out to them, and perhaps, is that number a bit skewed? Are there extremes even in this pay range that we see for gig workers?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of skew. The majority of contract workers are still on the lower cost side. And what I see is that, a lot of, permanent employees, right, those roles are now going to more contract workers. But at the same time, on the higher end as well, where, you would hire like a senior leader for the job, you are seeing hiring of a lot more consultants or people who have been there in the industry, and the companies can't afford them fully, but, definitely want to utilize their services. Right, so that's the a major shift that we are seeing. I think it also reflects the maturity of the ecosystem, right? Because while there's this sense that we need to always have like a permanent job, at least for the senior folks who are very sure of their skill set, I think they believe that they can do better in some of these environments in a contractual role instead of doing a full time.
And, what is the trend you've observed with salaries for non-gig workers? And I'm talking about the permanent workers here. You said there was a slowish rise, about 12%. Which are the sectors that are able to pay more? Which are the sectors that have paid the least? What are the trends you observed in salary payments?
So I think broadly, I think this is impacting all the sectors in uneven ways. Like I would say, fintech overall is faring better, right? Some of the gaming companies have done better over time. So there are sectors which have done better, but I think this is a trend which is present across all the sectors. At the same time, I think technology is the department which is the least impacted, right? Because there we have seen a decrease of just 4% compared to other departments that are there. that talks about the supply-demand gap of good engineers, good technology people in the ecosystem, and also that most companies are still very hesitant to pull back investment in developing their new products or R&D because I believe everyone feels that it will impact their both short-term and long-term growth, and that's not something that they can compromise on. It takes a long time, by the way, to build out the engineering team compared to some of the other departments, because most startups are very technology first, and that is why that will be the last sector to get last department to get impacted.
Okay, tech clearly will be the last department to get impacted. But, in terms of gender parity, again, we continue to see this play out among startups as well. Surprising, these are newer companies. One would expect, you'd see more parity between genders when it comes to pay, when it comes to hiring. But Shashank, that's not the case.
Absolutely. I think we continue to see that case. I think there's still significant gap between the gender, hiring as well as the salaries paid out to both, males and females. Like we are still seeing that the median salary gap between men and women was close to 46%, in the last year, right? And as we go to higher salary brackets, at the 95th percentile, there is a whooping 70% difference between, in the salaries between the two genders. I think this also reflects the fact that, women still make, a larger percentage of the junior workforce versus the senior leadership and the mid-level managers. I think we still see a majority gap there in terms of, growth of women and promotion of women overall in the industry. And I think that trend has been present, throughout last decade as well.
Shashank, we've completely run out of time. In just one line, what about Razorpay? How has your hiring and salary payment increased over the last year? Just quickly, final word.
Yeah, so I think our salary payment has increased almost by 13% in last 1 year. Okay. We haven't done any layoffs, or we don't plan to do any layoffs, but we have also slowed down new hiring given the macro environment and taking the overall picture into account. But overall, for us, we are still very healthy, financially, and we are still looking to expand internationally in offline payments and in multiple other areas.
All right, Shashank, we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for your time here. It was a pleasure speaking with you.